Good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Funny Like a Clown podcast. I am your host, Dennis Wirth, coming out of G Vegas, that's Gardner, a little town out of Boston. Rainy day here in Boston. This is episode 25, May 19th, 2019. We are here to discuss comedian Jerry Seinfeld. As always, Funny Like a Clown is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time. There is only one G Vegas available at gvegas.webs.com. And we got a big backyard barbecue contest coming up this summer in Gardner. So look at it, sponsored by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. So if you're going to barbecuing, then hey, we'll go to the website, check it out. But to discuss Jerry Seinfeld, I have on the phone friend, comedian, Boston guy, Dave Decker. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for having me on.
How things going for you in the Boston comedy scene?
Well, thank you.
No, how are things going for you?
Things are going well. I had two great shows last night with Lenny Clark,
Okay.
and one at Chunky's in Pelham, and another one at Headliners Comedy Club in Manchester, and both were sold out. And of course, Lenny sells out everywhere he goes. And
Lenny's Lenny, he's the
so,
best.
It was good.
That's good stuff. All right. What makes you a fan of Jerry Seinfeld?
Just, well, of course, the show is, iconic.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of those few shows that you can just continue to watch, and it's still good. Even though you know every single line, you know what's coming, it still makes you laugh. And I realize it's a co-creation, with Larry David, et cetera. But there's just something about the two of them together just created that magic. He also is just an amazingly disciplined comic. His work ethic is probably unparalleled. He spends, like he says, 4 hours trying to get a 9-word joke down to 7 words to get to the funny quicker.
Right.
It's that kind of almost surgical precision that's just really, really very impressive.
That's a good point. That's what they say. That's when you know a joke's really funny. When you've heard it before, you know the punchline, and you still laugh anyway because it's just that funny. But I mean, you mentioned his TV show and his comedy and everything. Do you got a favorite memory of him, or favorite episode, or a favorite comedy bit, or something?
I saw him live at the Wang, and I believe it was a tour that he actually ended up doing. I don't know if you saw the documentary Comedian with him. It was that tour that he was putting together in that documentary. So that was kind of special to see the documentary, see the work that went into it, where he had left Seinfeld and scrapped every single joke he ever wrote and started from scratch.
Started over, wow.
Yeah, the whole documentary is just about him starting with, as he calls it, 5 minutes material, 3 of which was crap, and then building it into the show that we saw at the Wang, which was just amazing. So, and he's just the timing, the delivery, the precision. It's a joy to watch.
He's spot on. All right. So, best known for Seinfeld, a sitcom about himself. As you mentioned, he co-created and wrote with Larry David. And it was a show about nothing. And I know in comedy, everybody says, be different. That's what people want. They don't want the same old routine. Do you think that was half the magic of the show, was nobody thought about making a show about nothing before?
I think it was that, and I think for some reason, none of those characters are likable. Like, you would not want to be in a relationship with any one of them.
Wouldn't want them for neighbors, right?
But yet you tune in, they created like a group of people that are almost borderline despicable in the way they look at the world around them, and
right.
the callousness, and yet you just keep tuning in, and
you could relate to it, though. Everybody's got miserable people in their life, right?
Right, but like usually you try to get away from them. There, people are like running to the TV sets to see more.
Right.
Crazy.
That was the twist of the show, right? Also known as a stand-up, known for his observational comedy. In 2005, Comedy Central voted him the 12th greatest stand-up of all time. I mean, would you put him higher or lower on that list, or where would you put him?
Oh, boy, that's such a big list. I think 12th is safe. Yeah,
I thought, they threw him in with every comic, but I mean, I think he's the best at what he does as far as clean comedy. If you did a list of just clean comics, I think I'd put him higher, but he was in with the dirty comics as well.
Top
but
5 clean comic, yeah.
Yeah, definitely in the top 5 with Cosby. I mean, it'd be let's see.
I agree with that totally, because I think, like you said, well, plus, he's had the longevity. He's
that counts.
gone through this just amazing career that just, he's probably one of those people that turned comedy from something you did because you wanted to do, and I think a lot of people got into it after the success of Seinfeld, like as a career choice. I think it became a different game.
I mean, because I mean, Pryor and Carlin, they're all going to be, number one and two always because they paved the way in the road, and like you mentioned, the longevity of their career. I mean, there were some comics who died early. Who knows what they would have went on to do? But I mean, longevity certainly that's a big one when you're going to go for comedy.
Exactly.
Let's see. He produced, wrote, and starred in 2007 in a B movie. Now I know that's a kids movie, but did you happen to see it or no?
I actually didn't. It was on my bucket list at the time, and that year, I usually have a list of movies I want to see, and I was curious to check that out because my understanding is I think he was at dinner at Steven Spielberg's and said, "Hey, you should do a movie about a bee called Bee Movie," and I think it was Spielberg said, "Yeah, we should, and you're going to be in it, and you're going to write it," and he's like, "Oh, that really wasn't where I was going with that," but
really,
so it's just kind of like he thought it'd be funny, the play on words with Bee Movie. And just threw it out there casually, and again, I think it was Spielberg that was behind it. Said, "Yep, that's a great idea, and you're going to write it."
Isn't that kind of like a safe move for comedians nowadays? Because I mean, the kids' movies, they're pretty much, unless they're really bad, they're going to go on to do something where, you don't want your second project to be a flop. So I mean, it was kind of a safe move for them, wasn't it? Making a kids' movie.
Yeah, exactly. And from what I hear, also is comedians and actors just love those because they show up to work in their pajamas, they read the lines,
right. Voiceover work, right?
Yeah, exactly. So.
All right, so I guess the one blemish in his career, I mean, not really a blemish, it was good, but in 2010 he premiered on the Marriage Ref. That only lasted 2 seasons on NBC, and I mean, it wasn't a huge hit. I do remember. What do you remember about the show?
I remember that it was unmemorable.
I think he got the 2 seasons because he was Jerry Seinfeld. Anybody else, it might not even lasted that long, right?
Exactly. That's probably very, very true.
But I mean, did you see any episodes of it or no?
I remember seeing like 1 or 2 and going,
Yeah,
it's hard. But you do something like Seinfeld or a MASH or All in the Family or whatever. Anything you do after that is just downhill.
That's a good point. Once you hit the top, there's only one direction to go, and that's downhill. And he hit the top with Seinfeld. There was no other direction to go, right?
Yeah, there's very few people that can pull off. Bob Newhart did it,
right?
With 2 very great shows, and
it's a rarity, though. Yeah,
it's rare.
All right, but he did make somewhat of a comeback, and I'm not a big fan, but I am a fan of this. He's the creator and host of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Have you seen any episodes of that?
I have. Yep, that's a lot of fun. It's that kind of thing is obviously different. It must be great for him to just kind of like hang out with other comics and his friends and talk and make a show of it.
Kind of like I'm doing on Funny Like a Clown podcast, hanging out with my friends talking comedy.
Exactly.
I'm having a blast. It's easy, it's fun, and it's what you do. But he brought out a lot of his friends in comedy. I know Howard Stern, I believe, was on the pilot episode, and it was kind of wink, wink, you be on my show. Wink, wink, I'll come do the Howard Stern show. But I mean,
exactly.
Getting the big fans, big stars, that was a part of the thing. But it's a web series, and I wanted to make a point of this because, in our time, the big thing was to get on TV, and TV's kind of fading away nowadays, isn't it? With the internet, a lot of these kids, they're going to Netflix and streaming, and TV's becoming a thing of the past in comedy, do you think? Or?
Yeah, well, it's yes and no. It's just so fragmented now. I think we're losing, in many cases, like that communal experience. Like everyone, what is it? 100 million Americans or whatever, the number was, watched the last episode of MASH. But we watched it together on CBS at 9 o'clock, kind of like the Super Bowl where we all shared the same experience. Now
at the
you
same
download
time.
it, you watch it on your phone a day later.
Whenever you want, right?
Yeah, whenever you want, and it's not like everyone's all together. They're all watching.
Right, but it's at different times.
They're watching on so many different platforms at so many different times that I don't know. It's kind of like the moon landing. Like we were just all dialed in one moment as one people holding our breaths.
Right.
That's rare.
But I mean, the web series, I know Star Trek, I'm a Star Trek fan, and they released a new Star Trek series, but the only way you can see it is on the web, and you have to pay for it. So it's like, now I got to pay for TV, and plus I got to go to the web and pay to watch TV too, and I know
Right.
the Karate Kid. They came out, made a series out of that. The only place you can watch it's on YouTube, and again, you got to pay for that. So that's probably the next big thing, I think, isn't it? The web series, or
Um, yeah, I think maybe part of it too is just if maybe the bar is lowered on production cost and entry, so that before maybe you needed 1 million people to get a show to be viable, and now if you're on a different platform with lower cost, if you have 50,000, you can consider yourself a hit. I don't know what the metrics are, but I mean,
everybody has a stage nowadays. It's not just the stars. I mean, put your
yeah,
phone in front of you, hit
I mean,
record, and you're on.
and it's funny to me because and I'm always impressed that like you look at the first couple seasons of Seinfeld, and that's painful. I
Yeah,
mean, those characters it's like MASH.
they had
The
to
couple
find their
first
groove.
seasons of MASH, those characters had not gelled. Those people were not running like as a unit. You could just feel it. The especially at Seinfeld, the humor just dragged,
Took time to
and
come
the
together,
timing
right?
was off. But once they hit their groove, like season 3, 4, 5, and they were like, kind of like watching the Bruins now finally come together as a team. You're going, that's what it's supposed to look like,
Finally gelling, the
Uh,
magic hit, right?
yeah, and maybe now, like if you have that kind of struggle year one or whatever, you just get dropped, and nobody gives you the time to develop.
Right. So let's see. Seinfeld, he appeared in open mics in New York City while attending college for communications and theater. He was a regular at Bud Freeman's Sex Club. After graduating, he tried out for an open mic in New York City at Catch a Rising Star. That led to an appearance on HBO's Young Comedian Special with Rodney Dangerfield, and that was a big thing back then, wasn't it? Rodney gave a break to so many people, but I mean, if you made it on one of his specials, you were pretty much a made comic, don't you think?
Yeah, that was big. And, of course, he was that was in that time, around, like when a little after, I think a little after Carson, when Carson was the big break.
Right. Yeah.
And then as things, Carson went away and television started just blowing up with cable with the 800 different shows. Rodney, that seemed to be kind of the place to go. So yeah, I agree with that.
If you were a dirty comic, you couldn't get on Carson either. So I mean, he paved the way for dirty comedy to be a bigger thing than it was. I mean, the
Exactly,
Sam Kinnisons,
exactly.
the Andrew Dice Clays, the Roseanne Barrs, the Tim Allens. Not that Tim was dirty, but I mean, he gave all these guys their break. Louis Anderson. I mean, the list will go on and on.
Yep.
All right,
Oh
let's
yeah,
see.
it was great.
1981, he did Carson's Tonight Show and The Late Show with David Letterman. 1987, he got his own HBO stand-up comedy special, Confidential Special. I mean, what do you remember? I mean, the TV show, but I mean, other than that, what do you remember most about his career?
Um, Back then, it was just there were so many comics coming at you, and he definitely stood out because he was, like you said, he was clean, and it was. He likes to call it. He goes, other comics were talking about the bricks. I talk about the mortar. He was going into little things that make you go, oh, which now almost seem like people make fun of, observational humor and
Right,
what's the
right.
deal with airline food and even on Seinfeld the show they make fun of people will say, oh, Jerry, you still doing that? What's the deal with and they kind of crap on him a little bit, which is funny in the show. And of course he makes
It was everyday stuff. You didn't have to think about it. I thought that was half. I work all day and think all day. I want to come home and relax. I don't want to think about my comedy, and it was just stuff you
Right.
didn't have to think about.
Right, but he worked so hard to make that look so effortless.
To make it look easy, you're right. Yeah, yeah.
Right, that's the key to it. I think he, he talked about back in that day when he was doing his first Carson appearance. He went to, I think, 50 or 100 clubs or something. He did the Carson 5 minutes at every single club in New York City, like 5 times a night, like for the month before he actually went on Carson. So, he shows up on Carson and it looks like he just kind of like, waltzing through it. But he spent almost a month of comedy time doing that
Right.
5 minutes and nailing it,
People don't get it. If you do these TV shows, it's very tough because there's all kinds of rules you have to work by, and that's why I say you got to see it a live show where there's less rules. I mean, TV's. I've done it a few times, and your comedy it never comes out the way you want to because you're working by so many rules. It's not a flowing set unless, like you said, you put in the work he does to practice for it.
Right, and it takes you a little out of your environment. Like you said, it's different. The cameras, the timing, the whole thing. Usually sometimes there's obviously not for Tonight Show, but there's a smaller audience.
Yeah.
And now you're like, you don't know how that humor is translating to some guy sitting in his living room with a six pack.
It's a
That
different
you'll never
game,
see
yeah.
or know whether he's laughing or not. It's weird.
All right, so let me make this point. I mean, this is how big the show was, where even if you had a small role on Seinfeld, you could be remembered. Do you remember the No Soup for You? No Soup for You 1 year, the soup guy?
Oh yeah,
This guy's actually touring doing Comic-Cons, and people are coming paying money just to, who was pretty much an extra on the show at best, Do you believe that's how big the show was, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, what else is this guy going to have in his life? I mean,
Pretty much it, right?
People with, well, actually, that's not. I mean, there were a bunch of people like Terry Hatcher. She was they're real and they're spectacular. She went on to other things. There's a lot of actresses and actors, and then Tony V, our beloved Tony V.
Yeah.
Went on to.
He was the Umbrella guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was Clicky the Umbrella guy, and but that type of guy is such a niche character. Like, what's he going to do? I mean, Shakespeare in the Park or whatever.
Right.
I mean, he can write his own ticket just being the soup Nazi now.
Just being the one little role, he stole that episode with the one little role. Now, I mean, for every good story like that, there is some bad stories. Now, the actor who played Kramer, do you know his real name? I forget it off the top of my head.
Richards, Michael Richards.
Michael
right?
Richards. Now,
yeah.
He did stand-up comedy for a while, and he got blackballed for using the N-word during an episode. I mean, do you believe that a career like that could just come to a halt because of one mix-up like that, or?
I think nowadays, tragically, it's true. Now, I don't know him. I don't know whether he's a racist or not. I honestly believe he tried to go edgy. It didn't work, and he doubled down on edgy and got even darker, and it worked even like he dug a hole so deep. Which great when you're all alone in a comedy club with no cameras on, that can happen, and you get booed off the stage, and you move on. Now somebody films it, it's on YouTube, and now
everybody knows.
And now they have him as a member of the Klan for saying the N-word, which he shouldn't have said. Whatever,
Yeah, but I mean, do you believe the show was that big, and that one mistake would just end your career like that? I mean, you're not entitled to one mistake in life,
We're living in very unforgiving times.
Yeah, I mean, since then, you haven't heard much from the guy at all, if anything, and...
No, you haven't, and that's... and again, I don't know whether... Honestly, I've never seen him do stand-up. I don't know.
Right.
I always thought he was perhaps more of a sketch comic, type guy, but whether he's really has good stand-up material or not, I don't know. So I don't know whether that helped him or hurt him.
I mean, I think it was how he's making living at that point, because, the TV kind of ran its course with him. None of them really did good other than Jerry after the show.
Well, except for Elaine. Oh, God. Blanking on her name. She's in Veep. She's won like 96 Emmys for Veep, and Dreyfus, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's done pretty well, for herself. And you're right. George Costanza's done a few...
well, he had his own show, and it didn't last long, man.
That didn't last long.
Yeah, well, the guy who played Newman, he was in Jurassic Park, too, so, I mean, they all had little stuff, but...
Right, exactly.
Nothing that would live up to Seinfeld. Seinfeld said his influences...
That's hard to top. That's really hard to top.
Yeah, it is, all right. Seinfeld said his influences were Jerry Lewis, Bill Cosby, George Carlin, Jay Leno, and Abbott and Costello. I mean, other than Jerry Seinfeld, who were some of your influences in comedy?
Bill Cosby was my first love. I mean, it's tragic what he did and who he really was. Because, I'm old enough to remember going to a library and renting, albums, and you go in the little booths with the headphones.
Sure, you can't take away that you laughed at his material. I mean, you want to separate the man from his work, whether you can or you can't, but we all laughed at his stuff, yeah.
Oh, it's just, and then I saw him 4 years before all that news broke. Chris Earl and I saw him at the Wilbur in Boston, and he was still at 80 years old as brilliant as he was when I remember.
I did, yeah. I seen him at Foxwoods right before the movie Fat Albert came out. He was promoting that, and he was still genius doing what he was doing. Yeah.
And you just felt like you were hanging in his living room talking to him for 2 hours and laughing. It was just, it's so.
It's true, so he did. He made you feel like it wasn't even a show. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so sad what he did. But yeah, then a lot of my comic influences go way back. Like you said, I mean, we're talking, Charlie Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy.
Old school, right?
So the Marx Brothers are probably my favorites of all time. And then Abbott and Costello and those guys, and W.C. Fields and all that stuff. But more as far as stand-up comics go, then, I get into, coming of age, get into Carlin, because, oh my God, someone said the 7 dirty words, when you were...
He made you think, yeah. He really made you think, Carlin did, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought he was brilliant. Sam Kinison, I still miss. I think he took you places you didn't want to go and made you laugh.
Right.
And I thought that was great. And I think Richard Pryor is probably one of the most original, greatest American comics ever.
Paved the road for everyone.
He died almost in obscurity. He should have been on the cover of Time magazine when he died. And he was almost just completely forgotten, which is tragic and sad.
Right. I mean, I heard this on the radio once, and I just thought it was a fun point to put in here. Jerry Seinfeld actually has a credit card, okay? And he's one of the few people in the world who have an unlimited credit card. The banks pretty much tell him, you set your limit, you spend it. Can you imagine having a credit card and just having no limit whatsoever?
That's crazy. I can't
That's
imagine
insane to think about, isn't it? Like, you tell us what you want. You're going to tell the bank what you want to spend. They're not going to tell you. I mean, I always thought that was a fun fact I had heard about him.
Oh yeah, I mean the money he made on that show. He was. There's a great book if you love Seinfeld. It's called Seinfeldia, and it's about the whole making of that show, from the creation of it through the process, and how they did it, and how they made it work. And at the end, when he said, "I'm done," like it was Jack Welch that owned GM, that owned NBC at the time. Had him and his manager over his penthouse for dinner, and said, Jerry, you tell me the number you want, how many millions per episode to keep this thing going, and I will pay you. Do you want 5 million? Do you want 10 million? And Jerry's like, no, I'm done. I'm just done.
Yeah.
It's not about the money.
Well, he said it was like when you watch a comedian, and you think they're funny, but then you get into an hour of watching his humor, it's like, yeah, okay, I get it, and he didn't want to overstay his welcome, he said. That was why he cut the show short.
Yeah.
Which is a smart move, Yeah.
Yeah, he thinks things through. He is a very, very, like I said, disciplined and smart comedian.
He's a good businessman, too, on top, which it takes in this business, on top of the comedy. You got to know the political side and the business side, yeah. So let's see, some of his albums, I'm Telling You for the Last Time in 1998, Jerry Before Seinfeld in 2017, Stand Up Confidential was actually on VHS in 93, which dates him a little bit, and us, but I'm Telling You for the Last Time in 1999, I mean, do you remember any of these specials or CDs or albums or anything else?
I remember, I can't say I own them, but I remember listening to either all or parts of some of them at some point, catching clips of them, etc. But seeing him live, I think,
that's, where you got to see him.
I know a lot of people who I really didn't like him, but then they go see him live and they go, wow, he's actually better than they were expecting.
Everybody's better live because it's the chains are off, It's, All right, you want to take a few fan questions?
Sure.
All right, let's see. Nick Pizzotti wrote in. He had a picture of Newman, which we talked about. I go back to Welcome Back, Kotter. We remember the Vinnie Barbarinos, John Travolta. We remember the whole cast, but Welcome Back, Kotter. Gabe Kaplan, he was a star of that show, but he made all those kids stars. And I mean, Seinfeld pretty much did it for the rest of the cast. Newman and all those, he's the one who made them all stars, right?
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, he's the guy. Let's see. Jocelyn Napoli writes in, when Crazy Joe Davola leaves a message and he has a hair on his tongue. Do you remember that episode?
Oh yeah, he's like trying to spit it out. He's like, I forgot about that. Crazy Joe Davola. Yeah.
So you do remember the episode? I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it's funny. If it's on, I still watch it, and I can sit there and I can actually silently mouth the lines, and I know exactly what's coming next and how they're gonna say it, and I'm still enjoying it. That's art. I'm sorry.
You're right. Tracy Richard writes in, she's got a picture of Jerry Seinfeld, and he has some really thick glasses on. Do you remember the episode of him in thick glasses?
Yeah, that was in the movie theater when it was Lloyd Braun. Kramer didn't want Jerry to think Lloyd Braun was crazy, and it just like everything in Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm, it just spun out of control. Where Jerry had to pretend to wear these glasses so Lloyd Braun wouldn't think that he was crazy because he thought Jerry wore glasses. It was just a crazy thing, but he wore these giant Coke bottle things. You couldn't even see the
Couldn't
hands
see
in front
nothing.
of his face. It was pretty funny. Yeah.
All right. Well, a friend of mine, Karen Bartram, she wrote in The Night in New York, and I'll have to explain that one. Was I do comedy like you, and I was performing at the Gotham one night in New York City, and I was in the green room, and I was playing on my phone, and I looked up from my phone, and I'm standing right next to Jerry Seinfeld, believe it or not. He was on the early show, I was on the late show, and we were passing each other in the green room. And he was there with Jim Gaffigan was also with him, and they were talking together, and top 5 coolest things I ever seen in comedy. Jerry was getting ready to go down the stairs in the green room, and this young kid went up to shake his hand, and Jerry must have caught him out of the corner of his eye. Now, most stars would have kept walking. Jerry got to the bottom of the stairs, turned around, walked right back up the stairs to shake that young kid's hand. I thought to myself, man, that's how you do it right there. Don't forget where you come from. So,
that's nice.
Top 5 coolest things, and Jim Gaffigan on the other hand, he was flipping out. He's like, I'm getting recognized. I gotta get out of here. I'm getting recognized. Boom, went dodging through the crowd out of there, and I was actually down there with Rob Steen, another friend of ours, and a few other friends, and they seen him come out the door. They told me later, like, hey, Jim. He's like, busy, guys, and he just kept walking. It was like, I guess there's a guy who did forget where he came from, but Jerry, he didn't forget where he came from. I thought that was a cool story.
That's great. That's a great story. Yeah.
Let's see, Ren Jones writes in, Serenity Now.
Serenity Now! Oh, I love that episode. That's another one.
What was that about?
That's Ben Stiller's father, playing George Costanza's father, and he was listening to these motivational tapes to try to calm him down. He's always agitated, and he'd go around screaming "Serenity now!" and then George was like, why are you screaming it? You don't have to scream it, And the father's like, well, the man on the tape wasn't specific about, and so. But yeah, that was another great character.
It's a catchphrase, right? Catchphrase now. Let's see. Yeah. Tim LaRoche writes in, selling fake Porsches. Do you remember an episode selling fake Porsches, the cars, the Porsches? Do you remember an episode he sold fake Porsches on, or no?
Fake Porsches? Wow, I don't remember that. I know Jerry's a huge Porsche fan, and he owns like 100 of them or something.
Oh, maybe it was from Comedians in Cars.
Might have been.
Might have been from that, yeah. Who knows?
Jerry's got a big Porsche collection.
He's big into cars. That's why he does the cars and the coffee thing together.
Yep.
Jake Jacobson, he pretty much put up a picture of a signed ticket where he went to see Jerry, and then he met Jerry, and Jerry signed the ticket stub for him. But I know, me personally, I'm a Sam Kinison fan, and I've spent around $10,000 collecting Sam's stuff. I'm big into it. But do you have any comedy things that you display in your house, anything, or you're proud of?
Let's see. Trying to think what I have. My brush with fame as far as doing shows with anybody was Jimmy J.J. Walker, so I've got an autographed picture of him hanging up because that was fun. That was we rode up together, he and I and Steen, to show up in Vermont, stayed over and drove back, and it was like whatever it is to get up there, 6 hours in a car with him telling stories about Robin Williams and Seinfeld and Jay Leno, and it was just amazing. I could have driven.
You're sitting there like a little kid. You want more, right?
Oh,
I've had those nights.
Tell me what it was like back in the day, So,
right.
Yeah. So that's my favorite right now.
All right, Dave. We end off every show with trivia. I'll give you 3 trivia questions about Seinfeld and see if you can answer them. Sound good?
All right.
All right. I'll preface this. Nobody does good on trivia, but it's informational. Most people go 0 for 3. Couple people go 2 for 3. Nobody's gone 3 for 3. If you go 3 for 3, we send you a bottle of G Vegas Buffalo Sauce, our sponsor. Okay, you like buffalo sauce?
All right.
All right. You like buffalo sauce?
I do. Big fan.
Let's win you a bottle right now. All right. In 1980, what popular show did Seinfeld play Frankie, a mail delivery boy with comedy routines that nobody wanted to hear?
I'm gonna go 0 for 3. I know I am.
This is before he was popular. 1980, he did a show where he played Frankie, the mail delivery boy, with comedy routines nobody wanted to hear.
I'm gonna say the Jerry Seinfeld Show.
It was Benson. Do you remember the old show Benson?
Benson, yes.
Benson.
Yeah,
He was on
especially
Benson.
with Robert Gilliam and all that. I knew when you told me I was going to hate myself. Yeah.
And I guess from reading that, he had a dispute over what was funny and what wasn't funny with the writers, and they ended up firing him, and he never even got notified that he got fired. He went to pick up a script, and he just had no script for him. That was how they let him know
right.
he was fired, by not giving him a script.
And I think, honestly, now that you say that, I remember him saying or reading somewhere that he said that he was never going to be on television if he did not have control ever again. He was never going to be put in that position again.
Right, yeah. Buddy Holly, the musician, he was the same thing. He had a tough time with. They wanted to tell him the music. Like, you don't know what's in my head for music. I know. You'd be hiring this guy, not me, if you wanted him to make you music, right? But
exactly.
All right, let's go on. Second question. In 2007, he made a brief return to NBC on an episode of what popular show?
Oh man, 2007.
Yeah.
A brief return.
He was on what episode as a guest?
Oh, boy. I got nothing on this. Oh, I've got a blank. This is horrible.
Take a wild guess. NBC show.
NBC show. 2007. Gonna go. I don't even know if it's NBC. I was gonna say Big Bang Theory, but probably not.
I was thinking that myself, but no, it was 30 Rock. He was on an episode of 30 Rock.
30 Rock. Okay.
All right, so let's see if we can go one for three here at the end. All right, here's your third one. And Forbes magazine said that in 2008 and 2009, he earned an estimated $85 million, making him the #1 paid comic of that year. He disputed Forbes' report on him on what popular show?
Disputed it on. I'm going to go with, you probably would have done that on late night television, so I'm going to go with Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Close, but no, it was radio. Actually, on the Howard Stern show, he disputed the Forbes magazine one. Well, we found out some stuff we didn't know about Jerry Seinfeld, but Dave, I want to thank you for being on Funny Like a Clown podcast. Before you go, being a fan of Jerry Seinfeld's, what would you want other listeners to know about him?
I just think, here's what I'd like. If you're into comedy, there's a series of CDs called On Comedy, which you can find online. This guy interviewed all these great comics, and the one Jerry Seinfeld has is brilliant, and you get an understanding of how to craft a joke and how to write a joke and what it takes to get people from the punchline to, from the setup to the punchline, and it's really, really well done. So the series is called On Comedy. Some guy named Neil, I can't think of his last name, is the interviewer, and he talks to Carson and Jerry Lewis and everybody, and all of them are great. The Seinfeld one is really brilliant.
All right, something for our fans to look up. I look forward to seeing you in the comedy scene, Dave. Take care.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on. Have a great day.
There you go. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye.
All right, comedian Dave Decker on Jerry Seinfeld, and, as far as clean comics go, man, when you're working that kind of money, it's because you can keep it clean, and everybody can listen to a clean comic where not everybody can listen to a dirty comic, and they say it's easier to make it's easier to make a clean joke dirty than it is a dirty joke clean. So if you can work clean, you work for everybody, and that's why he's at the top of his game with shows like Seinfeld and Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and pretty much everything that touches, he turns to gold, because that's when you're a great comic. All right. I am Dennis Wirth. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. Until next time, keep laughing, folks. Laughter is the best medicine. See you next time. Bye.